Welcome to the Mount Pleasant Podcast, featuring discussions and interviews about the people, places, and events that make Mount Pleasant such a special place.
This is the Mount Pleasant Podcast. I'm your host, Brian Cleary, and all thanks to the great people of Mount Pleasant Magazine, I get the honor and the privilege of introducing you to Mount Pleasant, the people who make it such a special place to do business, to work, and even to live. We're introducing you to Mount Pleasant's best on the Mount Pleasant Podcast. One of the pleasures of living in Mount Pleasant, at least for me, is the fact I get to head down to Shem Creek and get some fresh local shrimp right from the dock. There's a lot happening on Shem Creek right now, and we wanted to bring you up to date on all what was happening here on the Mount Pleasant Podcast. I'm Brian Cleary, and joining us today is Kevin Mitchell with the town of Mount Pleasant. Kevin's the Deputy EDS Director. Kevin, let me start there. EDS, those initials stand for what?
Engineering and Development Services.
So what we've got going on, a renovation of Shem Creek, but not all of Shem Creek, because there's different parts of Shem Creek and everything. So if you can take us a little bit back, Kevin, what was the impetus? Why did we think, okay, we've got to do some work on Shem Creek?
Well, the town purchased the property in 2019. It was the former owners operated the Wando Dock shrimp company, and they put it up for sale. And the town, through some negotiations with the buyer, ended up purchasing the property, which was extremely important to help preserve that and keep that from being developed, that site from being developed in the future. So that really kind of started it off. And then from there, we immediately went to renovating some of the life safety matters. We evaluated the environmental conditions of the site, and we started like right off the bat with just trying to make it a safe facility. So over the years, after we've kind of patched and we kept it kind of limping along, we came to the point where we needed to do a complete overhaul of the docks and the building that is situated over the water. Now, the building that was situated over water was condemned on the early part of our evaluation, our structural evaluation, because it just was not safe to house workers. So that's going to be part of this project. The project is going to be complete removal of the dock itself, and then replacing the dock almost in the same footprint, and maintaining the actual structure itself to meet regulatory requirements, but then rebuilding the structural foundation and shoring up the integrity of the structure itself without actually removing the structure.
People understand, I mean, this is a pretty huge project, but some people would say hindered by or helped by the fact this isn't just like, hey, I'm going to put up a shed in my backyard. A lot of environmental things. I have to think there's a lot of government red tape, not so much from the town of Mount Pleasant, but from the state, maybe even from the federal offices that you have to deal with as well. Would that be an accurate statement?
That's fair. We did have to go through the normal permitting process through DHEC OCRM. There was public notice. We've also reached out to both adjacent property owners. We had meetings with each one of those individuals. It was advertised for public notice, and we went through the entire process. We had meetings with OCRM, and eventually, we did, and this was a joint permit between OCRM and the Army Corps of Engineers as their standard operation procedure. And we eventually got the permit. It took us about a year to get that. So yeah, we went through every step that a normal major project would go through.
Island Vibes. Honest, sincere, and factual.
So excited about the new independent newspaper covering all the positive news on Isle of Palms. Thank you so much for this new publication.
Island Vibes is a deal.
You're listening to the Mount Pleasant Podcast.
So today on the Mount Pleasant podcast, we're talking with Kevin Mitchell. Kevin works for the town of Mount Pleasant. He is an engineer, and we're talking about what's going on at Shem Creek. Shem Creek, something we feature on the pages of Mount Pleasant magazine all the time, and we focus on today here on the Mount Pleasant podcast with me, Brian Cleary. So Kevin, let's look down the road as we go through the project, which is underway. What's your timetable in terms of when you think this might be completed?
Well, we've already started the project. The contractor, Cape Romaine, contractors have mobilized, and we've to be able to keep the Tarvin Seafood in operation at that facility. We've broken up and we've set the project up into two different phases. Where the first phase we'll remove and replace the section that's closer to the mouth of the creek. That'll be rebuilt and open for access for the shrimp boats. And then the second phase, they're going to move down to where the structure is, and then they're going to redo and renovate that. It's going to be a total of 12 months to complete.
And you said Tarvin's will remain open, so businesses like the wreck fish, we won't see necessarily any interruption to business along the creek, will we?
No, sir. We specifically made plans so they would be able to maintain their operation throughout the construction process.
And in terms of the shrimp fleet that we see there in Shem Creek, they'll still be able to do their normal heading out to the water, coming back, bringing a shrimp, or will there be some adjustments for them as well?
The only adjustments is the lack of dock space. So we made available our float docks on the other side of the creek temporarily for some overflow mooring of their shrimp boats. But that's going to be their only inconvenience, is shuffling the boats around the construction barge that's situated there. So yes, there's going to be a slight inconvenience for them, but everything is we're taking many steps to try to keep this operation going.
Everybody in Mount Pleasant, and well, people come from all over to go to Shem Creek because the beauty of the creek, certainly the improvements that have been made, even to the bridge where we're walking now from one side to the other safely and all that. Paint me a picture in your mind, if you can, Kevin. What do you think ultimately in the end, the area that you're talking about with the renovation, can you give me an explanation of what you think that'll look like?
Well, we're hoping to preserve the way it looks. We know the character is very important. Mount Pleasant has that rustic working waterfront feel, and has been greatly diminished over the years as the shrimping industry has declined. But we really want to keep that look of a working waterfront, because that is major part of Mount Pleasant's history. Our mayor, local, our elected officials, all are in support of the shrimping industry. So it's just such a huge part of Mount Pleasant, and it's a part of our rich history, and we really don't want to change the look of the way it is currently.
The deputy EDS director with the town of Mount Pleasant, Kevin Mitchell, is joining us today here where the pages of Mount Pleasant magazine come alive. This is the Mount Pleasant podcast with me, Brian Cleary. Kevin, how long have you been working with the town of Mount Pleasant yourself?
It'll be 25 years in July. You
probably didn't start in your current position, or maybe did you?
Well, I was the town engineer for many years in the planning department. So we went through a reorganization about 3 years ago, and then I moved my position and became one of the deputy directors of the new engineering development services, which is led by Brad Morrison.
So you've been with the town for 25 years. How long have you lived here in the Lowcountry area?
About the same distance, the same time frame, 25 years. I'm originally from Aiken, South Carolina, went to Clemson, and then ultimately, by the grace of God, ended up down here in Mount Pleasant. So it's been very fortunate. I grew up in a beautiful place, and then I ended up, living and working in another beautiful place.
Usually one of my litmus test questions that I ask my guests are South Carolina, Clemson. I guess I know where you fall on that spectrum.
I answered that one. I also have a daughter that graduated from Clemson as well, and she's moved on to Wake Forest Law School. So I'm actually rooting for a Demon Deacon too. So,
well, can you share a little bit else? What else about your family? Any other children?
No, just one daughter, and she's been doing fantastic, and looking forward to her final year up in law school and getting out from dad's payroll, and and moving on. So I'm very proud of her. She's a spectacular young lady. So.
Well, if she makes it through law school, I think she should be doing all right. Now, if I was heading down to Shem Creek, where would I be more likely to find? Now, this isn't a working question, but where might I be more likely to find you if you were on Shem Creek? What's one of your favorite haunts down there?
Vickery's, and they got Muddy's down there, which is very accessible to the Shem Creek Park, which is a great walkway. And it's beautiful out there at the sunset. So Water's Edge, Vickery's, all the places down there are really, really great. But I occasionally will go down there at a happy hour, but I'm no longer involved with the late evening hours anymore. So I don't really frequent the area that much.
Yeah, I resemble that myself as well. There was a time and a place, but perhaps we've moved on from that. Now, in terms of, you mentioned before that the town really ended up stepping up and kind of in a way saved that shrimping industry. So the support of council and mayor is obviously behind this project.
Yes, 100%. Yes. Every year we have a council retreat, and they prioritize our capital improvement projects. And this became one of the top priorities for this past year. So the funds became available, and we automatically started working on this project.
For people who are taxpayers in the town of Mount Pleasant, they may ask, you said the funds became available. Where are those funds coming from?
Well, our capital improvement project funds come from a variety of sources. This one is coming from our general funds to renovate the docks.
So, in your role with the town of Mount Pleasant, obviously this is the probably the focal project that you're working on now. What are some of the other things that you've had a hand in over your 25 years with the town?
Well, that's a great question. I've been very fortunate enough to be a part of the Shem Creek Park phases, all three phases, dating all the way back to, I think, 07, 08. The Pitt Street Bridge, that was one of my first few projects I worked on when I was here. And then there's numerous trails, the Patriots Point Trail, the Hamlin Plantation Trail, the Hamlin Park Plantation Trail out there on Rifle Range Road. And then I'm currently working on a number of stormwater projects in the old village. We have Edwards Basin, which is a 140-acre basin. We're also looking at the Ben Sawyer Kincaid Basin, which is about another 140 acres. Both of those are under design and will be soon under construction over the next year or two. So there's going to be a number of projects that are going to be managed through our department.
It really seems like the town does have a focus and a commitment. You mentioned the fact that the Shem Creek project that you're working on now, the goal in the end is to keep the beautiful feeling and sense and image that we have of that area. And it seems like that works through. Do you find that seems to be a common thread through all the projects you work on with the town?
Yes, the town, it really is, because what my projects are infrastructure projects and support projects. So, I don't work on projects that actually change, the way the overall character of the town. We serve as a support role, and we provide the technical expertise as long as as far as the projects and construction projects. We bridge that gap between the engineering, design, and construction, and then the local municipalities and the elected officials.
So one of the things that we've all experienced here in the town of Mount Pleasant is the growth. Obviously, we have a lot of growth coming in. You've got probably more projects today than maybe you did 25 years ago. From your department standpoint, is that growth a challenge, or is it something that you're able to manage?
I personally think we've been able to manage it very well. When I just came at the town, traffic was a huge issue, and it still is. A large concern and a priority for our elected officials. But then stormwater has eventually kind of risen up to the top of the priority in the past 5 to 8 years. And we're seeing it now, the money coming in from applying for grants, allocating funds through other sources, that stormwater is now taking kind of the lead, so to speak, even though traffic and transportation really is an important subject for our elected officials. But I see stormwater really has made its way up to the top. And hopefully, once we get stormwater, we'll be moving into improving environmental, protecting our natural resources. All those kind of comprehensive plan ideas have always been at the forefront, but one takes precedence over the other at times, and stormwater really has come to the forefront of a lot of our elected officials, and we are putting a lot of money into improving the infrastructure in the town.
Seems that there's always going to be another project for you over the horizon. Something's going to come up, but for now, this is really the Shem Creek project, a really huge project that's taking millions of dollars, but well worth it. And we'll see the results of that. You think so? Next summer would be a good call in terms of that. If everything stays on time, that we'll see the renovation completed.
Yes, sir. Our contract extends out to July of next year. We're hoping, and speaking with the contractor, he's confident that he'll be able to get everything wrapped up and completed ahead of time, which we hope. But we've allotted 12 months for him to take his time, make sure that everything is done properly. He's operating safely, and that there's coordination between them and our shrimping people, our shrimping partners down the creek.
Maybe a little bit of impedance for the shrimping industry right now, but I have to think long term, the town's thought is that this is going to help ensure that shrimping industry at Shem Creek continues to thrive.
Yes, without question. This was a great investment by the town of Mount Pleasant to preserve this area. Otherwise, we would be looking at a small development down at the very end of Hadrill Street, which I think would, everybody would agree that they would much rather see shrimp boats tied up down there than mega yachts and so forth. So we're able to preserve a little piece of Mount Pleasant history by doing this.
At the end of the day, I walk into Tarvin's, I get a pound of shrimp. We're going to go have shrimp. Are you wanting scampi? You want grilled? You want fried? If Kevin's going for the shrimp, how are we going to make it?
I like boiled shrimp. Boiled shrimp's my, that, and having a shrimp gumbo is one of my favorites. I go to all the time, and also the Low Country boil. That's at the very top as well. So yeah, I'm up for it anytime.
Kevin Mitchell, the Deputy EDS Director with the town of Mount Pleasant, a role that he's had for 25 years, and he is right now the driving force that's putting it together. It's the town shrimp dock and shrimping processing facility renovation and rebuild. It's going on now, making the town of Mount Pleasant a better place, as we always strive for. Kevin, thanks so much for your time today.
Thank you very much. Appreciate you having me.
The pages of Mount Pleasant Magazine come alive here. It's a great place to live, a great place to work, a great place to visit, and a great place for shrimp. And we're happy that this is all going down on Shem Creek. I'm Brian Cleary. Thanks for joining us today on the Mount Pleasant Podcast.
Thanks for spending your time with the Mount Pleasant Podcast, your community, your podcast. Listen to past and future episodes at mountpleasantpodcast.com.